Hi everyone, welcome to our small footprint. I went to edit the video for yesterday today and realised that I hadn't done an intro. So for day 4, which was yesterday, I am editing it up now and sharing it with you. We did a whole lot of salsa, some cashew cheese and some nachos and a bunch of other stuff as I go through and edit it on. So enjoy watching and please subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you again tomorrow. A regular meal around our house is flatbreads. I make a sourdough flatbread dough and it rises overnight and then it goes in the fridge in the morning. It can be used from the fridge for a couple of days. Being a flatbread, it doesn't really matter if it doesn't have a significant rise. The longer it sits in the fridge, the flatter you can roll it actually, and it ends up being more of a tortilla type flatbread than a naan type flatbread that it is when you make it the first time. We regularly have it sitting in the fridge for a couple of days and use it throughout those couple of days as a quick meal when we've got other stuff going on. So I made this batch last night and then cooked up enough for lunch today. I had more of the chicken thighs that I had marinated. I had more of them to cook off, so I cooked them off as well, and we had it with homemade mayo and with lettuce and tomato, and just had a hearty lunch with the sourdough. The kids had it as well, and that was breakfast or lunch for the kids, breakfast for us. I then had to move on to the tomatoes. So the box of tomatoes was starting to get a bit squishy at the bottom, so they definitely needed to be worked on next. We decided to make salsa with this batch, so I am a bit of a lazy salsa maker, and I just cored them and cut them up and then put them through the Thermomix into just a chunky mash rather than diced pieces, so that I could leave the skin on them, because I just didn't have time to do the blanching and peeling of them for a skinless diced type salsa. You have to be aware of the amount of tomatoes that are going into your pot so that you can make sure that you have the right amount of other acidifying ingredients into the pot to compensate for the peppers and the onions that you add. So I had to measure the tomatoes into the pot. I also put onions, and these were onions from our garden too, which was really nice. It was nice to have onions that I'd pulled out of the garden and had been sitting in here curing to use in our salsa, even if it wasn't with homegrown tomatoes. Hopefully next year we get enough tomatoes that I can do homegrown tomato salsa as well, but we do what we can with what we have. And for this particular time, I used store-bought tomatoes. They are local though. I then had to cut up and de-seed the peppers, so I used a range of shishito peppers, some aji pineapples and some jalapenos, and just used them as I felt that I needed. I ended up adding a couple more later to add a bit more heat, and I was saving the seeds for them as I went through so that I have them for planting for next year as well. I used the Thermomix as well to mince up all the onions, garlic and peppers, because I wanted it nice and fine to go through the salsa. We added lemon juice, a bit of sugar. There was some lime juice that I had frozen in the freezer that I added as well for flavour, salt and pepper, and just the onions and all the mix-ins as well. Put it on heat. Had to bring it up to a simmer, up to a boil I suppose, and then simmer for 10 minutes. I did add a jar of tomato paste because I didn't really want to spend the time cooking it down. I'd prefer it to have that fresher flavour of not having sat on the stove for that long by adding the paste to thicken it. It went into a range of jars. I had some of the jam jars that are the 350ml jars, as well as some Fowler's 20s, which are 650 I think, and some pint jars as well, whatever I had there that was suitable to put them in. I scooped out with a spoon with holes in it to fill the jars initially, so because I knew that would be a fair bit of liquid left behind, but I poured that liquid into jars as well. That liquid is, you know, peppers and onions and tomato juice and stuff. It can be used in a bolognese or any sort of a stew or something as well at another time, so it was worth saving. I cleaned all the rims of the jars like you have to with white vinegar and a clean paper towel, and put all the lids on the jars ready to go into the canner. I did these in the steam canner because I was using hot plates for other things, so I did them in 3 lots actually in the steam canner, and they were 20 minutes each in the steam canner, which is the equivalent to water bathing them. Because I made the salsa, we decided to take advantage of that and had nachos for dinner. So I made cashew cheese for the kids. It has nutritional yeast, cashews, onion powder, garlic powder, smoked paprika, a bit of mustard powder, and then I use some of our canned chicken stock to blend it up with to make a sort of a sauce, because it'll heat up when you it'll thicken when it's heated over the nachos. Or if I wanted to use it as a spread, I could have heated it in a pan on the stove, and then they could have used it as a like a cheese spread on something else, or as a dip or anything like that. You can thin it further with more stock or put less in it if you want it thicker. And then I used the Thermomix to blend it all up as well. This is how I label my seeds when I save them, just with a Nico on the paper towel until they dry for a couple of days, and then I sort them and put them in amber jars. This was our nachos, so we used the tortilla chips that we buy from Woolworths or Coles, and we used the salsa, and we used the marinated chicken thighs on these ones because we just happened to have it already cooked up. It seemed pointless to defrost something else to use when we already had meat available. Some people have been asking lately about why the kids eat differently to us. They do sometimes eat a different meal, but most of the time they're eating the same thing. I just serve them and get them out of the way, and then I tend to film our meal instead. So they had nachos as well, 2 big baking trays worth that they were already eating when I was making this lot for Darryl and I. I have cheese on mine as well, so this is what they look like coming out of the oven. After dinner, I made some sourdough pizza dough for the next day. So I made a double batch of the original recipe that I have altered to suit for our tastes. So it makes 12 bases. We only use 8 in a meal, but we just use the other 4 somehow over the next couple of days. It can be in the fridge for quite a few days before it's unusable as pizza dough. So then I just leave that on the bench to rise overnight. I got asked how my vertical planner was going, so here is some footage of the vertical planner. The basil is bolting on the top already, which is a bit frustrating. I'm having a lot of trouble with basil this year, but it's working really well. And I actually received a second one. It's still in its box at the moment. I got the Mr Stacky reached out after I shared the video with them, and they offered one to me for shipping only, so that is just fantastic. I've got 2 that I can set up now, which is superb. And this is what the salsa jars looked like after they had been processed. So some are a bit thin, some are thicker. We will just use them accordingly, and they will all taste fantastic. Thank you for joining me again, and thanks for watching, and hopefully I will see you again tomorrow.